So this is just going to be me speaking for a bit. I haven't got any other videos. I don't make them, as you can probably tell from the stellar production value this one's going to have, but it just feels like everyone has lost their minds, and so just for my own sense of sanity, I need to talk about it. Now the start of this whole thing, I'm going to say it was coming from a good place. Originally, maybe it was coming from a good place. It was coming from a place of live and let live, and with all the positive liberal beliefs that we should all try to uphold. But I've got to say, you can live and let live without being a liar. And the statement trans women and women is a lie. And it's a lie with the inevitable follow-up question of, okay, well, what's a woman? Now, according to the world, not too long ago, it was adult human female. It was a description that made logical sense. But now the answer has changed, and it seems to have changed really quickly, like so much so that if you give the definition that has worked for millennia, you're now seen as a bigot, a transphobe, a TERF, and in some cases I've seen, like Hitler. Because now the correct answer is anyone who identifies as a woman. And I've just got to take a little moment here just for like the loss of critical, or in fact any kind of thinking. A woman is someone who identifies as a woman. Isn't that just circular? Much like a chair is something I see as a chair, or a turnip is something that looks like a turnip. Like, how is that a description? How is it an actual definition? Because by that standard, a cauliflower could be a turnip, or in the interests of true inclusivity, I could be looking at a hedgehog and call it a turnip. You know, it's just nonsense. And even if being a woman was something you could identify into, you need to give some traits. Well, I would like you at least to give some traits, just a couple of examples of things, surely, that you are identifying with. Like, if you're asking me for my pronouns and you're calling me a cis woman, you're asking me to identify myself as a woman based on gender. That's what a cis woman is, right? A female whose gender identity aligns with her sex. So you kind of need to tell me what woman as a gender identity is, so I know what I'm identifying into. I don't have a body dysphoria, you know, not in that sense at least. So is it just someone who doesn't have a body dysphoria? Is that what a cis person is? Like, I don't know if that really goes to explaining a specific gender identity. I mean, for those who haven't really seen how far things are going or have gone, I'm sure what I'm saying sounds like hyperbole. It sounds like an exaggeration of nonsense, but they really are trying to claim it isn't about being polite anymore. When they say trans women and women, they mean it literally. They're trying to redefine women, not based on sex or biology, but by gender. So Okay, so let's talk about what gender is. According to the APA, gender refers to the attitudes, feelings, and behaviours that a given culture usually associates with a person's biological sex. That they usually associate with it. So, right, in other words, stereotypes, and societal expectations. So, a woman is defined by the expectations society usually has for her. Like, it doesn't sound so progressive to me, if I'm being honest. Like, and if you get more specific and say, okay, well, I'm going to look up gender identity, it says that I can see, it says the personal sense of one's own gender, and that gender identity can correlate with a person's assigned sex. So not even gender there that's assigned anymore. Or it can differ from it. Again, I don't know what that is supposed to mean outside of a body dysphoria, like anorexia. Like, how else does it not match up? But you know, let's hear from them. Let's hear them out. Let's hear from Mermaids, the leading organisation in the UK for gender non-conforming kids. So basically, tomboys, an organisation who pathologise gender non-conformity and who say that you should be medically treated for it. Who talk about how gender is a spectrum and that we all have a place on it. I'll find the projection that they show, and I'll put it up for you to see. But it's like, it's so ridiculous and sexist. It's so sexist. And you just think, feminists have fought against this shit since forever. Except now it's being made out to be progressive. It's a chart where the very liberal, so-called progressive people have put femininity at one end and masculinity on the other, which is completely fine until you realise that this is how we are expected to define a man and a woman now. Instead of sex, we use gender. And, you know, I've heard people say, oh, if you define a woman as the female body, then you are reducing a woman to her body parts. And it's like, actually, no. A woman is what I am because that's my body. But I never said it was who I am. Like, who I am is based on my personality, my opinions, my thoughts, feelings and actions, none of which is exclusive to a woman. None of them make a woman. They make me, me. So no, I'm not being reductive. But anyway, back to the chart. Back to this regressive nonsense where femininity is synonymous with womanhood and masculinity with manhood. I mean, like, cards on the table, I'm not particularly feminine. Like, not 100% so. I can't put myself on the extreme end, at least. But just because I'm not on the extreme end, it doesn't mean I'm any less of a woman than someone who can put themselves there, who is 100% feminine. Like, if I was someone who bought into the nonsense, I'd probably identify myself as non-binary, really, because as due to this idea of women and men, non-binary are people who now feel like they can't identify as either, you know. And really, I'm trying to think of a woman who is 100% feminine. But outside of Barbie, Nobody is, surely. Like, everyone has a mix. And while mermaids apparently thinks that means there is therefore as many genders in the world as there are people, like, seriously, I saw a video where they said there could be 8 billion genders. Like, think of the amount of changing rooms and prisons and sports divisions we would need if we were doing it based on gender rather than sex now. But no, it doesn't mean 8 billion genders. It just means that a human being is not a two-dimensional character. You know, that's what that means. I don't know, it just seems that gender is another word for a personality now. And I don't know, if we are defining women and men based on that, I just think, who is a woman in that case? Like, who is a man? Who is 100% either way? You know, and if it's a case of, oh, there's 8 billion genders in the world, possibly. Like, so who gets the gender, the woman gender? Who are the people that are getting the man gender? Is it like there must just be a few of us, surely, like a handful of people. I don't know. It just seems that based on this chart, gender is ultimately bullshit. It means nothing, which I kind of agree with. So perhaps instead of elevating it above sex by means of women's spaces and sports and rights and that, we should perhaps not. And like, for those of you who have listened this far and who disagree and who think we should make it based on gender, like, perhaps you could tell me what the difference is between a woman and a man based on gender. Like, why should that difference, or why does that difference necessitate separate spaces in sports? Like, what's the difference between us? Why would you need a woman's division based on that difference in gender? Like, please tell me. And to make it the definition of, to make gender and societal expectations the definition of a woman. Like, I mean, it was understood not too long ago that it was incredibly backwards to have femininity be what defines a woman or a girl. Like, for there to be pink for girls and blue for boys, toys for girls, toys for boys, girls' interests, boys' interests. Like, don't get me wrong, it wasn't like we got rid of gender stereotypes and sexism. But it's like, Jesus, not even the most madman of the madmen era would have ever even, like, they wouldn't even have thought, let alone suggest, it was those ideas of gender that literally made a woman and a man a real man. Like, not literally. I don't know, I just find it insane how people are just going along with this. There's like really no kind of sense to it, and the sense that there is incredibly sexist and regressive. But I don't know, maybe it's me, maybe like a gender non-conforming woman, like I'm a big fan of Donna Tartt, the author, and if you see pictures of her, she's quite gender non-conforming. Like, she wears suits, and just in her presentation, like, maybe she's less of a woman than, I don't know, one of the Kardashians who like to wear dresses and heels all the time, or like maybe Ripley from I don't know, from Alien isn't a real woman. I think, well, she isn't. She isn't a real woman in that she's a fictional character, but you know what I'm saying. Yeah, I think they wrote her as a man originally, so maybe, I don't know, the casting of Sigourney Weaver doesn't matter. Ripley was written as a man. The writers saw Ripley as a man. The fact that Ripley has a woman's body doesn't matter. She is a man, you know. I've seen, it's just so offensive. Like I've seen some actually say that some strong female leaders of the past, like historical figures, weren't real women, or at the very least that people were starting to doubt that they were actually trans men. Right? Yeah, that sounds great. That sounds really progressive, and it's funny because in spite of the graph and in spite of the whole ideology, really, like the entire ideology, they still try to insist that it has nothing to do with stereotypes. Like I recently heard the trans man, I don't know their real name, but on YouTube it's Jamie Dodger. They were on the radio and got asked about gender, and the interviewer said, well, isn't it just about stereotypes? And they said, oh, well, no, that's to do with expression. That's not identity. And it's like, well, okay, as far as I'm aware, gender expression is about clothing and presentation and like behaviour. But like, what about the stereotypes of gender that deal with none of that? Like interests, like a man's interests. Does that fall under expression? Interests? And if it does, or if it falls under one of the, like another label that they've made up for it, what, if anything, falls under identity? Like, I mean, not to belabour the point, but what exactly are you saying makes a woman in terms of identity? Because it's like, I don't understand this feeling like a woman. Like, feeling like a woman. It's like, it's not an emotional state. Yeah, and if it has zero to do with stereotype, what's non-binary about as an identity? Like, what's that about? Like, it's funny. I actually want more people to be gender non-conforming. Like, if this was about clothing, brilliant. Like, I used to really like Eddie Izzard, and when he wore well, he still wears skirts, but I really appreciate it when he was like, no, these aren't women's clothes. These are my clothes. I bought them. I thought that was like way more progressive than him talking about going into girl mode. Like, what does that even mean, girl mode? What does that mean? It's just, again, it's just so regressive. And for me, the non-binary thing proves it. It proves that it's all about stereotype now, both expression and identity. I mean, like, the fact that they feel unable to call themselves men and women suggests, well, it illustrates that they see men and women as defined by certain limitations. So you kind of like think, well, okay, what are those limitations? There now seem to be barriers, which again, like, for me, it just proves that it's all about stereotypes based in sexism. It's really strange. Like, I've asked this question before about, okay, so what's the limitations of a man and a woman in order for someone to feel like they have to, that they should identify as non-binary instead. And yeah, I either get ignored or called transphobic, or if they do answer, it's, oh, well, you know, they're non-binary because they identify as non-binary. You know, just like a woman is someone who identifies as a woman. It's like the usual circular non-definition. So we've like no reference to an idea or anything. It's literally just a word with no definition outside of a certain arrangement of letters. A woman is different to a man, not in terms of body, but that there's a W and an O in front of it. And this whole thing of having it so, like, basically the word woman and the word man is pretty much meaningless. It just makes me question the sense or need for testosterone injections even more, to be honest. Like, if it's about a body dysphoria, that I get. I understand it being body dysphoria, and I can only have sympathy towards transsexuals who felt such unease with their body that they had surgery, and it was, you know, a way to alleviate the psychological pain that they were in. But like gender identity, it isn't being presented as a body dysphoria anymore. It isn't presented as a man who wished he was a woman. It's like, no, he is a woman. Or, like, if they do it properly, she is a woman. You know, that penis right there, no, that's a woman's penis. It's just like the power of self-ID has just gotten to the point of being nonsensical. And like I say about the words woman and man no longer having any definition, at least according to this. And it's like I've actually heard a few activists say that that's deliberate, that they're trying to destroy gender by making it meaningless. To which I just think, like, I don't know if that's your aim. I just think that you're trying to justify chatting bullshit. But if it is your aim to destroy gender, then that's great. You know, believe me, I'm completely on board with that. But if you're trying to destroy it, why are you elevating it above sex? Why ignore biology for like women's spaces and sports? And why are you making gender supreme? Wouldn't you just dismiss it? Like, it just seems in direct contradiction of their professed aim, like, to me at least. But like, let's be honest, there's a lot of contradictions, really, with like, so gender and sex are different, but we'll conflate them enough so that a trans identified male can go into women's sports, like, and sports, as far as I'm aware, sports are supposed to be about the capability of the body, you know, and what it can achieve. I don't know, it's just so strange. But anyway, I'm gonna leave it there, because I've had to stop and start recording a few times, but I think I've made my point. And I mean, there's just so many aspects to it. If it wasn't impacting women's rights or redefining men and women the way it is, if it if it wasn't hurting kids, if it wasn't doing all that, then fine. So long as you're not telling me to lie, go for it. Like, do whatever makes you happy. But no, it's like this is actually damaging, and it doesn't look to be getting better anytime soon.